Welcome to 3DOptix Tutorials. Today we are going to show you how to add catalog optomechanical CAD objects to your optical system. First, we need to create a new file. I pre-populated this file so we can just move into the project. Okay, now we have a few options to add CAD optical mounts and hardware from the catalog. From here in our 3D layout, we're going to go over to the outliner bar here on the left and click on the catalog tab, also on the left here. This is going to pull up the CAD object filter and search bar. First thing we want to do is use the search bar, but before we do that, we are going to maximize the outliner. Now we can see everything perfectly. Okay, so we're going to search for a mount. Now we get a list of mounts in no specific order and no specific parameters here. Okay, that's fine, but we probably want a mount that fits a specific optic we have in mind for our optical system. Let's go back up here to the search bar and look for a KS1 mount. Now that's a kinematic mount from Thorlabs. Okay, and if we click enter, we see that that mount actually does pop out. Okay, now we're going to drag and drop this mount into our optical system here. All right, fantastic. Now, since this is a catalog CAD object from 3DOptix, we have a few nice features that user-imported objects don't have. Let's go ahead and click on the mount here, and the right ribbon bar is going to pop up. We're going to go here to the fourth option, which is now post settings. Now, that will actually allow us to change the height of the optical post that's associated with this mount. So let's go up to 150. As you can see, the post will raise up the entire mount. Now the maximum setting here is 175 millimeters, and the minimum setting is about 74 millimeters. All right, so let's go back up to 100 millimeters. Now we can also hide the post if we so choose, if we just want the mount face there. But we don't want to do that for this tutorial, so we'll bring that back. This is a great feature if we want to use the coordinate system of the mount for a lens. They will both move in tandem as you change this post height. Now let's look at how that works. Let's go ahead into our optics catalog, and we're going to search for a 25.4 millimeter lens, so 1-inch lens, and we're just going to select the first lens that comes up. Okay, now we have our lens over here. Let's go ahead and click on it, and we are going to select the reference frame for this lens to be the coordinate frame for the mount. Okay, and now we're going to set it to the origin, which will be at the origin of the coordinate frame for our mount. Let's get a top-down view here. So let's back this out a little bit so we can put it more into the mount. Oh, a little too far, so let's back it in. Okay, great. Now our optic is referenced to this mount. And from here, if we go back to post settings, we can change the post height. There we go. And we can see that the optic moves with it. So again, a really nice feature for putting optics together so they can move in the same way. Okay, so let's move this guy off to the side for a second. And let's go back up to the outliner bar. Now, one thing I did want to mention before we move forward is the search function here. The search function works no matter what folder you're currently in. So we can be in any one of these filter folders, say light, and we can search for the KS1 mount, and the KS1 mount will come up. Okay, so let's use the filter drop-downs below the search bar to search for various CAD optomechanical mounts. So what specifically we're going to be looking for is a cage system. As you can see, we have a lot of options here. So we are going to search for cage system, and that brings down a few more filter drop-downs. So we also have a second subcategory of cage components or cage construction. We'll stick with cage components. And we also have the last subfolder type, so we can do cage plates or many other types of cage systems. We're going to stick with cage plates. Okay, so let's just click on the very first mount we have here. This is just a 1-inch mount, and we're going to set this to the origin really quick. Okay. All right. Now, again, we have the post settings. If we click on the mount and go to the ribbon bar, we've got the post settings here. And we have another option because this is a cage system CAD object. So this is the length of the cage construction rods. And as you can see, they pop out of the back here. So we can use this as a cage system. Now, the cage will move by 12.5 millimeters, and you can remove them completely if you set them to 0. You can move them in steps of 12.5, and then you can maximize them to 600, let's try that again, to 635 millimeters. Let's move them back to 200 millimeters. Okay, great. Now let's go back to the outliner bar, and we're going to grab a cage plate. So we're going to grab this 30 millimeter cage plate for 20 millimeter optics. Going to drag and drop into the 3D viewer here. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to grab this cage plate, and we're going to drop it near the rods. Okay, and as you can see, since we dropped it near the rods, the cage plate is going to snap to the rod system. So it is now attached to those, just like it would be in a real cage system. Okay, so let's go ahead and select our primary mount with the cage rods in it. And as you can see, the cage plate will still stay on the rods even if we change the post height. Okay, and if we go back to the new cage plate, we see under cage settings, this has a different setting. So the text box to the right is now selectable and changeable. And this is a way to move it along the cage system. So as you can see, it moves along the cage. So we can put this as close or as far away as we want, depending on where the cage rods are. And just to note, if you move the CAD object off of the cage plate or the cage rods, you'll no longer be able to set the distance on these rods because it's not connected anymore. But you can then add rods to this object. So let's go ahead and move this back onto the rods. We'll put it back at 100. Okay, so if we select our primary cage system, this first mount, and move it around, we'll see that the cage plate will move with it. So it is attached to those rods. Okay, now this is a really useful feature in that we can combine many cage objects together and move them around as one single object, just like a real cage system. Easily inserting and manipulating CAD objects is a great feature of the Optomechanical catalog in 3DOptix, and I hope this helps you use and understand this catalog more easily.